Spartan Spartiates. Sparta did not believe in a gentle childhood. Spartiate boys were taken from their mothers at age 7, underfed on purpose, and expected to steal food to survive. If you were caught, the punishment was not for stealing, it was for being bad at stealing. For a Spartiate, holding the battle line was everything. If he broke formation, he could lose his family's reputation, his brotherhood, and his place in Sparta. That's why Spartan mothers supposedly gave one chilling order: come home with your shield or on it. At Thermopylae in 480 BC, 300 Spartiates and about 7,000 allies held a mountain pass against a massive Persian army for 3 days. When the Persians found a way around the pass, King Leonidas sent most of the allies away and stayed behind with his 300. They died buying time. Soon after, the Greek fleet won at Salamis, and the invasion failed. But Sparta did not stay unbeatable forever. The Theban general Epaminondas smashed through the Spartan right side with troops stacked 50 men deep. 400 Spartiates died in one single afternoon. For a city that had once fielded 8,000, that was devastating. After Leuctra, Sparta never truly recovered. Berserkers. Berserkers were basically nightmare Vikings. They often charged without armor, sometimes without shirts, and they usually went in first. Their job was simple: hit the enemy shield wall so hard it cracked before the main fight even began. Before battle, they entered a trance-like state. Witnesses described men frothing, howling, biting shields, and acting more like wild animals than soldiers. The 9th century poem Harald Skvadet places wolf-coated berserkers at Havsfjord. Christian writers called it demonic. Historians have suggested hypnosis or psychedelics, but nobody knows for sure. In wartime, having berserkers around was a huge flex. Kings and earls used them as bodyguards because they were useful and terrifying. But in peacetime, that same behavior became a big problem. Icelandic law eventually made berserker behavior outside battle a crime, and men in that state could be killed without legal consequences. By the 12th century, berserkers had disappeared. Turns out society has limited patience for shirtless rage monsters. Mamluks. The Mamluks started as enslaved boys from the Eurasian steppe. They were converted to Islam and trained for years until they became some of the most dangerous cavalry on earth. A skilled Mamluk rider could fire accurately at full gallop, reload, and fire again before many infantrymen prepared a second shot. In 1250, Mamluk commanders did something bold even by medieval standards. They assassinated the Sultan they served, defeated the 7th Crusade, captured King Louis IX of France, and took Egypt for themselves. That's a hostile takeover on horseback. Their most famous moment came in Ain Jalut in 1260. Baybars rode in front of the Mongol line for hours, then pretended to retreat. The Mongol commander Kitbuka chased him. Then the hidden Mamluk army closed in from the hills. Kitbuka was captured and executed, and the Mongols suffered one of their first major defeats in open battle in decades. Baybars later took power and spent 17 years crushing what remained of the Crusader states. The Mamluks held Egypt against Crusaders, Mongols, and Timur for 267 years. They finally fell to the Ottomans in 1517 when firearms changed the game. Ottoman Janissaries. The Janissaries were one of history's most feared infantry forces, and their origin story is grim. Christian boys, often 8 to 14, were taken from Balkan villages, converted to Islam, and raised inside the Ottoman military. They had no land, no normal family life, and in early service they could not marry. By the 15th century, they were among the first infantry units issued firearms. At Constantinople in 1453, Janissaries stormed a breach in the walls, climbing over men who had fallen before them. A soldier named Hassan planted the Ottoman flag on the battlements, and that afternoon the Byzantine Empire ended. At Mohacs in 1526, Janissary muskets helped destroy Hungarian cavalry in under 2 hours. The knights charged straight into close-range gunfire. King Louis II died during the retreat, drowning in a stream under the weight of his own armor. Heroic. But elite units can become political monsters. By the 17th century, Janissaries owned property, enrolled their sons, and removed threatening sultans. In 1826, Sultan Muhammad II surrounded their barracks and opened fire with artillery. The corps that helped build the empire was wiped out in one night. Winged Hussars. The winged Hussars looked like someone told an artist, make cavalry more dramatic. They carried 20-foot lances, rode specially bred horses, and wore wooden frames fitted with eagle feathers. At full gallop, the wings may have roared, though historians debate their purpose. At Kirkeholm in 1605, the Hussars faced a larger Swedish army. They opened their formation so cannon fire passed through the gaps, then tightened into a crushing charge. Their 20-foot lances outreached Swedish pikes, and the Swedish force of 11,000 was destroyed in under 20 minutes. Polish losses were under 100. At Vienna in 1683, King Jan III Sobieski led 18,000 cavalry down the hills above the city, in what is often called the largest cavalry charge in recorded history. His 3,000 winged hussars led the charge. The Ottomans had besieged Vienna for 2 months. Within 3 hours, it broke apart. The last winged hussar units were dissolved in 1776, but if your unit looks like an armored eagle on a warhorse, people remember you. Napoleon's Old Guard. Napoleon's Old Guard were not just veteran soldiers, they were the veterans. To join, a soldier needed 10 years of service and scars. They got better pay, better food, and the rare privilege of wearing mustaches when most soldiers had to stay clean-shaven. Ordinary soldiers called them les grognards, or the grumblers, because they were basically the only men allowed to complain directly to Napoleon and get away with it. Napoleon usually kept the Old Guard in reserve until the worst moment. At Borodino in 1812, he refused to send them in, saying, "If there's another battle tomorrow, where is my army?" At Waterloo, he finally sent them in late in the day. They marched up the ridge through artillery and musket fire, only to be hit by a flanking volley from the British Guards. For the first time, the Old Guard retreated. As Napoleon's army collapsed, the last square held its ground. When asked to surrender, General Cambronne reportedly answered with one word: merde. Napoleon surrendered the next morning. Gurkhas. The British first fought the Gurkhas in 1814 in the Himalayan foothills, and Britain quickly decided to recruit them. 2 British commanders were killed, and another assault was thrown back with heavy losses. The peace treaty allowed Gurkhas to serve in the British Army. That clause is still active. Gurkhas had served with the British since 1815. In World War II, more than 110,000 Gurkhas served across 10 divisions and earned 13 Victoria Crosses. At Imphal in 1944, they fought in terrain so rough supplies had to come by air. At Goose Green in 1982, British officers called their advance under fire unusually steady. Even getting selected is brutal. Around 28,000 Nepali men apply each year for 200 places. One test requires carrying 55 pounds up a near vertical hill in under 42 minutes. That is not a workout. That's a backpack-based villain origin story. The Gurkhas served before Queen Victoria took the throne, and they still serve today. Stoßtruppen. By the middle of World War I, the Western Front had barely moved in years. Germany's answer was the Stoßtruppen, or stormtroopers. Small, fast squads trained to slip around strong points instead of charging straight into them. They carried grenades, light machine guns, and flamethrowers. If an officer went down, the next man kept going. Captain Willy Rohr developed the tactics in 1915, testing them on a replica trench behind German lines. At Riga in 1917, Stoßtruppen crossed the Dvina River and shattered Russian positions that had held for months. At Caporetto, the same tactics helped capture 265,000 Italian prisoners and pushed the front back 100 miles in 11 days. Erwin Rommel led 150 men who captured 9,000 Italians over 3 days. In March 1918, Germany's spring offensive opened with 6,500 guns, firing 3.5 million shells in under 5 hours. Stoßtruppen crossed no man's land before many defenders reached their firing positions. It was the biggest advance on the Western Front since 1914, but the attack outran its supplies and stalled. Germany surrendered that November. Still, the idea lived on. Modern special forces owe a lot to Rohr's trench tactics. Soviet Guards. In the Red Army, Guards was not decoration. It had to be earned. Stalin created the designation in September 1941 for units that had taken horrific losses during Operation Barbarossa and kept fighting. The first 4 Guards unit had more than 60% casualties. The reward was better equipment, higher pay, and the expectation that they would be sent into the worst battles. So, congratulations, you survived. Now report to the next meat grinder. Guard units received some of the best Soviet weapons, including T-34-85s, IS-2 heavy tanks, and self-propelled guns. They led major offensives across the Eastern Front. At Prokhorovka in July 1943, the 5th Guards Tank Army fought German SS armor in a massive tank battle. Soviet losses were heavy, but the German offensive at Kursk stopped. By 1945, the Red Army had over 100 Guards divisions. 11 Guard armies, and 6 Guards tank armies. The 150th Rifle Division raised the Soviet flag over the Reichstag in May 1945. DEVGRU. DEVGRU was created in 1980 after the failed Iranian hostage rescue, where 8 American servicemen died in a helicopter collision before reaching the target. For years, the unit was officially denied. Basic SEAL training already filters out most people. Hell Week lasts 5.5 days with roughly 4 hours of total sleep, and about 75% of candidates do not finish. Even after that, only experienced operators may be screened for DEVGRU, and the full process remains unpublished. On May 2, 2011, a DEVGRU team flew into Abbottabad, Pakistan. The raid took 38 minutes. Osama bin Laden was killed, and the team recovered his body, computers, and communications gear. One helicopter hard-landed inside the compound, so the team destroyed it before leaving. In 2009, 3 DEVGRU snipers killed 3 Somali pirates simultaneously from a moving vessel at night in the open ocean. The hostage was recovered unharmed. By the time Pakistani authorities understood what had happened, the world was already finding out the news.